I can't see anything.
Damn, we're off course.
No, I can't see it.
We're way off.
On June the 1st, 1999, as an American Airlines jet prepared to land amid fierce thunderstorms, passengers knew they were flying into trouble.
I don't know what made me aware, so doggone aware, that we were going to have a problem.
Oh, no!
Within minutes, their worst fears would be realized.
Other one!
Other one! Other one!
I'm yelling, get away from the plane. Run. Get away from the plane.
I don't know where we're at, but there's a road that goes around the airport. Well, we got a lot of people hurt.
This film tells the story of a tragic and avoidable disaster. The investigation would reveal a lethal combination of pilot error, the devastating effects of severe weather, and a dangerous race to keep the plane on schedule. It would also uncover disturbing evidence of an industry-wide failing, one that could kill again at any time. Despite reliable aircraft and extensive training, modern airlines and their crews face unprecedented pressures. Intense industry competition demands that the whole system, from the flight planners to the pilots, be efficient and on time. The stresses this can bring would play a vital role in the loss of Flight 1420. For a large operator like American Airlines, the pressures start with the complex task of scheduling their vast fleet. Dispatchers direct the planes around the world in a carefully choreographed dance. The strain of maintaining this efficiency affects the entire system.
Of course, competition has become very intense, a lot of pressure on the dispatchers, pilots, flight attendants, and basically the whole infrastructure to accomplish the mission and make a dollar.
Every effort is made to ensure that nothing disrupts these fragile schedules. But there is one variable that no airline can control: the weather. The southern states of America are especially prone to severe weather. Storms not only cause delays, but pose extreme dangers to commercial jets. Delays, scheduling problems, and fierce thunderstorms would all conspire to turn a routine flight into a terrifying race against time. On June the 1st, 1999, American Airlines Flight 1420 is running late.
The movement of the storms, everything is sliding to the southeast. So yes, we do have a stormy evening headed our way.
The delay of Flight 1420 put pressure on the pilots even before takeoff. The responsibility can fall on flight crews to keep a tight schedule on track.
Dispatch, please. Yeah, it's Michael Arago.
Crews have strict legal limits on their duty time. The first officer warned the dispatcher that they were in danger of running out of time.
Duty time limit at around 11:16.
The flight had to take off in the next hour or be cancelled. The pilots also became aware of another pressure caused by deteriorating weather near their destination.
Pilots had a weather briefing that they got before they departed Dallas-Fort Worth, which provided the forecasts, the weather alerts. The dispatcher and the captain preparing for the flight looked at the weather information and thought they could get to Little Rock before the thunderstorms impacted.
The 139 passengers just wanted to get home.
I was traveling with my son and my daughter. We were coming home from our vacation. It was my daughter's first flight. The plane was late and there were a lot of delays, of course. It was tiring, it was frustrating, it was late at night.
They soon began to sense that Flight 1420 was racing against the weather.
As they called for us to board the plane, and they wanted us there and just to get on really quickly. Just get on, sit down, put your seatbelt on, we're going.
They did mention that there was bad weather between us and Little Rock. They wanted to get ahead of the bad weather coming into Little Rock.
Finally, over 2 hours behind schedule, Flight 1420 leaves Dallas. Unknown to the crew, the storms are already massing around Little Rock. 40 minutes later, 1420 is 100 miles from its destination. At this point, the voice recorder transcript reveals a calm and steady cockpit routine.
American 1420, you gonna still want lower?
So far, it's okay.
So far, so good, ma'am. American 1420 will let you know.
The first officer on American 1420 was a new hire. He had just recently completed training, and he had been paired on one of his first trips with this management captain. So now you had a very experienced pilot sitting in the left seat with the company, paired with a relatively new hire.
Bushman and Origal are clearly relaxed as they plan their approach and landing.
25 for 24, set and armed. Think this stuff's gonna work out pretty well?
Yeah, we're almost down to max landing weight.
There's a moon out. Or a spaceship.
Oh, it's the mothership.
Center pump's coming off.
All right.
The pilots are keeping a close eye on the storms ahead. Onboard weather radar scans a cone-shaped area of sky in front of the plane. Potentially severe storms show up in red.
There's your big what diddly.
Yeah, we got to get over there real quick.
Don't like that. That's lightning.
Sure is.
The American Airlines dispatcher issued an update on the shape and formation of the thunderstorms.
Right now on radar, there's a large slot to Little Rock. Thunderstorms are on the left and right, and Little Rock is in the clear, sort of like a bowling alley approach. Thunderstorms are moving east-north-eastward towards Little Rock, and they may be a factor for our arrival. I suggest expediting our arrival.
Dispatcher gave this flight crew the weather information. It appeared to him that there was going to be a gap, or what he called the bowling alley, where you had two types of thunderstorms or two thunderstorms with an alley between it. And that the flight crew, if they had expedited their travel to Little Rock, could probably make it up that alley before the two storms closed together.
But as Flight 1420 descends, the plan to beat the storms is about to go seriously wrong. The pilots do not realize that the walls of the bowling alley are closing in. The route flown by American Airlines Flight 1420 is flanked by treacherous thunderstorms, a corridor the pilots call the bowling alley. With 80 miles to go, the path to Little Rock still appears to be clear.
This is the bowling alley right here.
Yeah, I know.
In fact, there are the city lights. Straight there.
You want to go down?
Not yet, but pretty soon. We're about
80 miles from the airport, and we started our descent toward it. Quite a light show on the side of the aircraft, and we're going to be passing that on our way to Little Rock. It's been a pleasure having you aboard our short flight.
And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you
for flying American Airlines.
The lightning seemed to be on both sides of the plane. It lit up the inside of the plane. Very quick, you know, just kaboom type lightning, which was a little scary.
There was quite a light show off to the left. Normally that doesn't get pointed out. If you go past the Grand Canyon, that gets pointed out, but not a lightning show.
As the plane descends, transcripts of the cockpit voice recordings show that the pilots are aware of rough weather ahead.
Descent checks complete.
We got to get there quick.
Yep. Sit them down early.
Hello?
I think it's going to get a little bumpy here again, if you don't mind.
Do we need to sit down?
Well, how far through are you?
We're almost done, but not quite.
Well, finish it up real quick.
Okay.
I thought it was more turbulent than normal. I remember especially watching the flight attendant, and I was looking at her with amazement. I was wondering how could she hold those trays and pour the drinks and not spill everything. From that point, it just got worse.
With flaps 40, 130,000 pounds, 200 feet.
As they prepare for landing, the pressure on the pilots will now steadily rack up.
Not required.
Manual brakes?
Manual's fine.
At first, as the crew pick their way around the storms, everything seems steady.
Yeah, actually, there's a city right there.
Yeah.
Breaking through this crowd. Good, doing good.
Even when the first indication comes that the storms are advancing, the pilots take it in their stride.
Whoa. Looks like it's moving this way, though.
Yeah. Just some lightning straight ahead.
I think we're gonna be okay, though. Right there.
Yep, right down the bowling alley.
As my friends would say, California cool.
Cool. Peachy.
Exactly. 1420 at 11.3 for 10,000.
But when the pilots contact the controller at Little Rock, he gives the first of a series of alarming weather alerts.
Roger. We've got a thunderstorm just northwest of the airport moving through the area now.
Wind is 280 at
2.8, gusts 4.4, and I'll have new weather for you in just a moment, I'm sure.
Gale force winds are gusting to 50 miles per hour, enough to blow tiles off a rooftop. High winds pose a severe hazard for Flight 1420. Crosswinds could make it difficult to control the plane on landing. The pilots must quickly determine if they're within safe limits. They calculate the strength of the crosswind from its angle to their final approach.
All right, so that's 280 at 4.4.
Gusts at 44.
Right, near the limit.
Well, it's 40 degrees off. I mean, you're not out of the limit because of the angle, but that's pretty close.
The crosswind limit for landing is 30 knots on a dry runway, but Bushman and Oracle now become confused about what happens if it rains.
Well, 30 knots is the crosswind limitation, but see, 30 knots,
that's
well,
dry.
Wet. Yeah, dry.
What's the wet?
20.
It's 25.
The discussion is never resolved, and the crosswinds will soon be gusting well over the limit.
Flight attendants, prepare for landing, please.
The pilot's attention now returns to the bad weather ahead.
He said the storm was to the northwest of the field?
You said northwest.
Yeah.
Lightning strike, you said storm.
But the task of tracking the storms is made more difficult by the lack of sophisticated radar at Little Rock.
American 1420, your equipment's a lot better than what I have.
How's that final for 22 left looking?
What's that?
We can see the airport, but we can just barely make it out.
We should be able to make 22. That storm is moving closer like your radar says.
But it's a little farther off than you thought.
The controllers are going, well, your radar is better than mine, so forth. The controller in this accident had a monochromatic, or basically almost a black and white set of a radar, and could not determine the intensities of the storm.
Just 8 miles from the airport, the pilots now face another key decision: how to approach the runway through bad weather. Controllers routinely ask pilots if they want to land visually, instead of relying on the airport's Electronic Instrument Landing System, or ILS. But a visual approach means they must be able to see the runway, and this is proving difficult.
No, we can't really make it out right now. We're gonna have to stay with you as long as possible.
Now, as the wind suddenly changes direction, the pilot's problems quickly mount up.
The wind's kind of kicked around a little bit right now.
It's 330 at 11.
Whoa.
It's a little better than it was.
Yeah, 330 is a tailwind, though.
The crew now face the problem of having the wind behind them when they land, greatly increasing the dangers of overshooting the runway. Then the controller calls in with more bad news.
Right now, I have a wind shear alert.
Wind shear is a sudden change of wind direction over a short distance. It is one of the most feared elements of a severe thunderstorm. To combat constantly shifting winds, the pilots are forced to throw away their previous approach plans and start again. They have to reverse the direction of their approach, so they will be landing into the wind.
Yeah, we're gonna need,
We would rather go into the headwind, sir.
The pilot's decision to land in the opposite direction is a prudent move, but it will create serious problems.
Okay, right turn 250.
The long way around?
Yes, sir. You're a little close to the airport.
Yeah, right.
250, that'll work.
As the pilots turn to their new approach, the aircraft's weather radar, which scans in front of the plane, loses track of the thunderstorms. Worse still, the turn delays landing by more than 10 minutes. And with every passing moment, the storms are growing in intensity.
Runway 4 right, 111.3042. I think that was the airport below us.
Yeah, right, okay.
Switching runways, keeping track of the storms, all add greatly to the pilot's heavy workload.
Okay, 2217, glide slope, intercept all the way down. Missed approached, right turn to 4000. Let's see, you got the airport, right? So
Yeah, I don't have the airport.
Well, I'm saying you've got the ILS.
Yeah, I got the ILS.
Airline pilots, they make their money when they're flying into bad weather. When the weather goes down, now all of a sudden the workload starts to increase because you have to factor in low clouds, rain, lightning, thunderstorms, wind. All of these elements start to bombard you the closer you get into the airport environment.
American 1420, it appears we have a second part of this storm moving through. The wind now is
340 at 16, gust 34.
With the storms worsening, the pilots need to make it to the airport as quickly as possible.
You want to accept the short approach, keep it tight?
Yeah, but if you can see the runway, because I don't quite see it.
Yeah, it's right there.
All right.
You see it?
You just point me in the right direction, I'll start slowing down. Give me flaps 11.
Damn, it's heading right over the field.
American 1420, did you call me?
We got the airport, but we're going right in between clouds. I think it's to my right,
Off my 3 o'clock low, about 4 miles.
American 1420, that's it. Do you want to shoot the visual approach, or you want to go out for the ILS?
A visual approach will allow 1420 to reach the airport faster than one that depends on instruments.
I can start the visual.
If we can do it.
American 1420's cleared, visual approach, runway 4 right. If you lose it, need some help, let me know, please.
But a visual approach means the pilots must keep the runway in sight at all times. The transcripts now reveal rising confusion on the flight deck as the captain struggles to fix the position of the airport.
Okay, did you notice something? Did you see the airport there?
Where?
There, okay, right. You're on a base for it, okay? It's right there.
Well, I'm on a base now?
It's like a dog leg. We're coming in, and there it is, right there.
I lost it.
You're downwind of it. It's right there.
Well, I still don't see it. Just vector me. I don't know.
American 1420, monitor 118.7, runway 4 right, cleared to land. The wind now 330 at 21.
18.7 will monitor, American 1420, thanks. Cleared to land, runway 4. See
those red lights there. Now, what are they in relation to?
There's the runway. There's 2 runways.
Yeah, I know. See, we're losing it. I don't see how we can maintain visual.
The pilots now have to abandon their direct visual approach and request help from Little Rock's instrument landing system. But this delays landing even further.
Approach, American 1420.
American 1420, yes, sir.
Yeah, there's a cloud between us and the airport, and we've lost the field. We're on a vector.
Well, basically, we're on the last vector you gave us.
Which is like a dog leg, it looks like.
American 1420, can you fly heading 220? I'll take you out for the ILS.
This news footage shows the storm on the night of the crash. As heavy rain cuts visibility even further, Captain Bushman becomes frustrated.
See, I hate droning around visual at night and weather without having any clue where we are.
The thing that was really getting to me was I knew we were getting very low. I knew that the rain was not letting up and that we were being jolted around quite heavily.
See how we're going right in the middle of this crap?
Right.
Approach American 1420. I know you're doing your best, sir, but we're getting really close to this storm, and we'll keep it really tight if we have to.
The plane was rocking and rolling at that point. It was pretty doggone unstable. I don't know what made me aware, so doggone aware, that we were going to have a problem. I don't know what did that.
As Flight 1420 lines up for final approach, they are heading straight into the heart of the thunderstorm. The crisis for the flight crew is about to get even worse. With Flight 1420 4 minutes from touchdown, severe thunderstorms give the pilots another major problem. Blinding rain and thick cloud are obscuring the airfield. The visibility on the runway, known as RVR, is getting dangerously low.
We're going right into this.
American 1420.
Right now we have heavy rain on the airport.
I don't have new weather for you, but visibility is less than a mile.
And the runway 4 right RVR is 3,000.
Visibility is down to 3,000 feet. The pilots are unsure if it's safe to land.
3,000?
Roger that, 3,000, American 1420.
This is 4 right, correct?
American 1420, that's correct, sir, and runway 4 right, clear to land. The wind's now 350
at 30, gusts 45.
Can we land?
030 at 45, American 1420.
3,000 RVR, we can't land on that.
No, 3,000 if
what
you
do
look
we
at...
need?
No, it's 2,400 RVR.
Okay, right.
Yeah, we're fine.
All right. 15. Landing gear down. And lights, please.
As we descended through a very dark black cloud. The rain seemed to be going horizontal.
It was windy enough, apparently outdoors, that the plane was moving around a lot. I'd never done this before. I buckled up really tight, almost uncomfortably tight, and I was concerned enough. I put my shoes back on and got ready to go. There was something going on that made me very nervous.
The crosswinds are way over the limit. The pilots could divert to another airport, but they don't, even as the weather gets worse.
Wind shear alert. Center field wind 350 at 32.
Gusts 45. North boundary wind 310 at 29.
Northeast boundary wind 320 at 32.
The jolts seemed to be much stronger than I'd ever felt. You could tell that the thunderheads were extremely close to the plane. I said words to the effect that if he tries to land in this weather, we'll crash.
Flaps 28.
Add 20.
Then visibility falls drastically below the limit.
American 1420, the runway 4 right RVR
is now 1,600.
Damn.
The crew are rattled. Under pressure, they begin to make mistakes.
Can't see anything. Looking for 460.
It's there.
Couldn't see anything. The wind was throwing the plane around so violently. I think it was enough of a crosswind that I was afraid we were going to land on the wing. We felt like we were going to tip over. I mean, it just felt that bad.
You want 40 flaps?
Yeah, I thought I called it.
I knew the way he was jockeying the plane and the sounds of the engines that he was trying to get lined up for the runway, and I couldn't see it, and I couldn't see it, but I could tell we were close, and I kept thinking, where's the runway?
1,000 feet. 20. 40-40 land.
This is a can of worms.
Wind is
330 at 28.
I'm gonna stay above it a little.
There's a runway off to your right. You got it?
No.
I got the runway in sight. You're right on course.
I got it.
Stay where
I
you
got it. I got it.
Most of the people at that point in the plane were just holding on really tight, just looking forward. I mean, like rigid. I suspected the worst. I mean, I really did. We might not get down.
In the midst of fierce thunderstorms, Flight 1420 is about to land at Little Rock. Low visibility and high winds make the final approach treacherous.
Wind 330 at 25.
500 feet.
Plus 20.
Wind 330 at 23.
Damn, we're off course.
No, I can't see it.
Way off.
I can't see anything.
Got it?
Got it!
100 feet. 50 feet. 40. 30. 20. 10.
We hit the runway real hard. We didn't slow down.
We're down. We're sliding.
Oh, no.
We were still going very, very, very fast. And at that point, I thought, we're dead.
On the brakes!
It was just chaos. It was terrifying. Quite literally terrifying.
Other one!
Other one, other one!
When the plane actually stopped, there was a moment of absolute, total silence.
There was fire in front of me, and I could see debris, and it was silent. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm dead.
Well, I knew we were in deep trouble. You know, it's a process that started, and in some way it's got to end. It's going to end, and when it ends, how do I get out of here?
Within those minutes, I heard a small scream, and I heard it get louder and louder and louder, like it was on a megaphone. And it hit me, that's my daughter. And it's like, oh, okay, we've got to get out of here. You know, we got to do something.
The passengers struggled to get out before fire engulfed the cabin.
I had a broken scapula, dislocated shoulder, and cracked ribs, and all sorts of stuff going on, but I didn't feel a thing. I just wanted to get out. I was not going to die in that thing. I got out of that plane probably in 10 seconds. It's like being in war. Go, go, go.
I'm yelling, get away from the plane. Run. Get away from the plane. Go, go, go.
Some folks looked like they'd been in an explosion. Their clothes were tattered. I saw a man using his cell phone to call for help.
Okay, I don't know where we're at, but there's a road that goes around the airport. Well, we got a lot of people hurt.
Traveling at over 100 miles an hour, the aircraft ran off the end of the runway, plowed down a 25-foot embankment, and slammed into a steel walkway. The plane was ripped into several pieces. The wreckage finally came to rest on the muddy banks of the Arkansas River. Ten passengers died in the crash. Captain Bushman was killed instantly when the cockpit was split open by the steel walkway.
It was a shame I hadn't, literally a shame that I had not done more to save people. That's the worst nightmare I have.
The U.S. National Transportation Safety Board was immediately notified. Greg Feith was the NTSB's chief investigator.
The night American 1420 happened, I received a phone call about 1 o'clock in the morning. from our communications center at the NTSB advising that there had been an aircraft accident at Little Rock, and there may be some fatalities involved.
Fellow investigator Don Ike was quickly on the scene.
There's a sense of adrenaline as an accident occurs like this, where you're being launched to the accident scene. And there's a strong urge to get there, to try to find out what happened, to document the facts so we can prevent it from happening.
The NTSB set up a command center close to the site. They would spend the next 18 months piecing together the events that led to the crash.
We did have a basic idea when we got on scene of what had happened. We just didn't know why. We knew the airplane went off the end of the runway. We knew that the pilots couldn't stop it. We knew that the aircraft was destroyed going through this catwalk. We knew that the subsequent post-crash fire killed people. We just didn't know why at that point.
The NTSB worked backwards from the impact, piecing together the sequence of events from the final approach all the way back to Dallas-Fort Worth. The first question for investigators was why the pilots had been unable to stop the plane. Analysis of the tire tracks left by the skidding plane showed a complete loss of control after touchdown.
When you look at the width of those tire tracks, you then see that the airplane wasn't going straight, but in fact was sliding sideways. Here you have this machine that weighs 130, 140,000 pounds. It has 100 or so people on it. It is sliding uncontrolled off this runway.
Something had gone terribly wrong on landing, and investigators had to find out why. They questioned the survivors of Flight 1420, who would provide an extremely important clue. The NTSB investigators needed to find out why Flight 1420 had slid uncontrolled off the runway. They set out to interview surviving passengers, many of whom were local to Little Rock. Their eyewitness testimony would point the inquiry towards the most important mechanical system used to slow a plane down after landing.
We were really interested in were those passengers that were sitting in a position right near the wings who could look out the windows and tell us whether they saw the ground spoilers deploy.
Spoilers are large flaps that flip up on landing, literally spoiling the airflow over the wings. This prevents them from giving lift and allows braking to take effect. Crucially, none of the passengers saw the spoilers deploy. To check their testimony, the NTSB examined information from the airplane's black boxes. The flight data recorder, which monitors the systems on board during flight, confirmed that the spoilers had failed to deploy. The implications were catastrophic. Flight 1420 had no hope of stopping in time.
On the brakes! We're sliding! Oh, no!
So was the failure of the spoilers to deploy a mechanical problem? Or in the confusion of final approach, was it pilot error? To find out, the NTSB would make clever use of the cockpit voice recorder, or CVR.
Make it out. You want 40 flaps?
Yeah, I thought I called it.
One of the key elements that the CVR team was listening for was the setting of the spoiler handle. We saw on the flight data recorder that the ground spoilers didn't deploy. We wanted to know if the handle had been actually armed or not, and we were looking for a specific click sound. We couldn't find that sound on the accident CVR, which led us to believe that the handle was never in the armed position at touchdown.
Intensely busy in the cockpit, the pilots simply forgot to arm the spoilers. Had they deployed, the MD-80 aircraft might have overshot the runway, but it would have stopped before hitting the catwalk. The pilots had made serious and ultimately fatal errors, but investigators wanted to know why. They suspected that pressures earlier in the flight led to these mistakes. They turned their attention to the weather.
clear to us that severe weather had been in the area around the time of the accident. How it played a part was one of the things we had to try to discover. And putting the radar images in, the observations, trying to put it all together, would take weeks, of course, to get this information done.
The NTSB wanted to know what role the weather had played in the crash, and had the pilots been fully aware of the dangers.
See how we're going right in the middle of this crap?
One of the concerns that all pilots have when they're trying to land an aircraft is, of course, making sure that the crosswinds that they may experience don't exceed the capabilities of either themselves or the aircraft.
The wind's now
350 at 30, gusts 4-5.
Can we land?
This particular flight crew had a limitation, not imposed by themselves, but imposed by the company, and that was that they were not allowed to exceed a 10-knot crosswind on a wet runway.
Crosswind limits are clearly stated in the operating manual. The crew of 1420 were flying beyond regulation limits.
This is a can of worms.
There's a runway off to your right. You got it?
No.
The effect of the winds can be seen in this NTSB animation, showing the captain's desperate last maneuvers.
Winds definitely impacted the flight. If you look at the animation, you'll see them fighting the winds. Definitely not good.
We're down. On the brakes. Other one.
But when you start talking about a wet runway, thunderstorms, not good.
But were the pilots of 1420 aware of the hazards posed by the severe weather? For the NTSB, previous accidents had made the dangers of thunderstorms all too clear. In 1994, a US Air DC-9 fell victim to wind shear in North Carolina. The plane stalled at 250 feet and fell from the sky. A Delta TriStar crashed after flying into the most severe kind of wind shear that created an intense downdraft of air. So, should the crew of 1420 have aborted the approach?
There's the runway. There's two runways.
Yeah, I know. See, we're losing it. I don't see how we can maintain visual.
This NTSB weather animation overlays the path of the aircraft with ground radar images of the storm. Bushman and Origal landed in lightning, torrential rain and hail, and the crosswinds gusting well over the limit.
Based on the information that we had from ground-based weather radar, the flight crew of 1420 should have been seeing majority of that storm. They would have been seeing the leading edge going green, rapidly changing the yellow to bright red.
Can't see anything. Looking for 460.
As they progressed towards Little Rock, they started to paint the bad weather not only on their onboard radar, but they could see out the window lightning. And one of the key statements that this captain made, which basically summarized the entire flight, was the captain saying,
I hate droning around visual at night in weather without having any clue where we are.
I hate droning around at night when I don't know where I am. That was such a key statement. It was at that point, by an experienced 10,000-hour captain, that he should have abandoned the approach going into Little Rock and either gone to his alternate or made his way back to Dallas. But to make a statement like that and then continue an approach to an airport where you have a thunderstorm in progress over the airport is a recipe for disaster.
But the pilots were not the only ones to be heavily criticized. As the investigation continued, American Airlines flight policy would come under fire, and an industry-wide scandal was about to be exposed. For months after the crash of Flight 1420, the NTSB dug deeper into the circumstances surrounding the accident. The question was, who would take responsibility? American Airlines were reluctant to admit that their pilots had knowingly flown into a severe thunderstorm. Initially, they tried to pin the blame on the controller at Little Rock. Americans started legal action against the authorities responsible for airport controllers. Americans' lawyers claimed that the crew of Flight 1420 had not been given all the current weather information.
American 1420, your equipment's a lot better than what I have.
How's that final for 22 left looking?
But after interviewing the controller at Little Rock, investigators were unconvinced.
It's highly unlikely that the flight crew wasn't sufficiently informed about the nature of the weather and the severity of the weather, not only en route, but of course during the course of the landing at Little Rock.
The focus turned back on the pilots. Lawyers representing the passengers were determined to get American Airlines to accept liability for the crash.
I mean, it is about money in a way, because you want to make them pay. Because I saw the letters that they would write back to my lawyer, minimizing what we had been through, minimizing my daughter's burns, cuts, the psychological effects it had on my son at age 15, and my daughter and me, and just minimizing everything. So you want to find a way to hurt him.
Renee Solomons and many other survivors attended the NTSB public hearings held in Little Rock 8 months after the disaster. With the captain dead, the co-pilot was the first to testify.
As we went off the end of the runway, I could see the runway lights coming up, and I knew we were going off the end of the runway. I couldn't see anything in front of us, and all I thought was the gear would collapse, and we would continue to slide. It's got to be okay. And then all of a sudden, I felt the impact.
Well, I followed it as close as I could. You bet. I mean, I wanted to know what happened.
I went to all of the NTSB hearings. I was outraged. I was mad. For me, they didn't ask him the right questions. You know, I wanted to ask him, what were you thinking? Why did you all play chicken with our lives?
The co-pilot's testimony was highly controversial. In his account of the final moments of the flight, he claimed to have told the captain to abort the approach, otherwise known as a go-around.
Who can call for abandoning the approach?
Either pilot.
Did you call for a go-around at any time?
Yes, sir, I did. It sounds like after reviewing the tape, you can definitely hear the go and the around. It seems like he talked the same time I did, and I looked over at him, and he brought the airplane back on course.
However, when NTSB specialists studied the cockpit voice tapes, they couldn't hear this statement.
Damn, we're off course. No, I can't see it. Way off.
Even though he stood by that statement, we could never validate it. That led to a controversial finding because we weren't really sure if that took place or not.
The NTSB asked tough questions of the co-pilot, but was American Airlines training also at fault? Greg Feith put an American Airlines manager on the stand. What were the company rules for pilots flying near thunderstorms?
When asked the question, he basically responded that he just didn't want his pilots flying into that type of weather.
Our pilots are forbidden to enter or depart a terminal area blanketed by thunderstorms.
To the NTSB, this policy simply wasn't clear-cut enough.
Well, that's a very subjective call for a pilot. Pilots need boundaries. You have to set limits. If there's convective activity, that is thunderstorm activity, it's within 5 nautical miles of the airport. There's lightning, there's wind shear. Don't go there.
The deeper they looked, the more the NTSB found that flying into thunderstorms was disturbingly widespread. Extraordinary evidence given at the hearings revealed that the problem spread through the whole industry. Expert analysts from MIT spent weeks recording the flight paths of planes landing at Dallas-Fort Worth. They waited for thunderstorms and watched how pilots reacted. Their animation plots the planes coming into land, overlaid with radar images of the storms. Anything yellow or orange is a potentially severe thunderstorm. Of the 2,000 encounters with thunderstorms, 2 out of 3 pilots flew into the storm and landed their aircraft.
I was very surprised by the testimony at the public hearing, given the fact that they're flying the best equipment, typically have the best training, have the best information available to them. For those decisions to be made to continue into harm's way, it was very surprising to me that they tried to do that. Pilots know that if we go into that thunderstorm, we may not come out of that thunderstorm, and if we do, it may not be basically in one piece.
Why did so many pilots fly into danger? The MIT researchers found pilots were more reckless if they were behind schedule, if it was night, and if aircraft in front of them were also flying into bad weather.
In the Little Rock case, 2 of those 3 elements were present. It was night, and they were running late.
The MIT investigation was chilling evidence that the crash at Little Rock was part of a much wider problem.
We're not seeing a major improvement, put it bluntly. There's a limited time for training. Weather was a significant part that set up the stage of this accident. We do not condone any operation to be conducted in such weather. It is a known severe weather hazard, and it should have been suspended, no operation.
Ironically, it also emerged that new technology may be partly to blame for bad decision-making.
We're desensitizing pilots. We're putting weather radar on board aircraft. We're putting wind shear detection systems on airplanes. Most of these systems only react when you're in the hazard. That time, it may be too late.
But the root causes behind the crash of 1420 went even deeper. Why were the pilots so determined to land? Greg Feith found the answer back at Dallas-Fort Worth, before the flight even left the ground. There he found signs of a deadly condition in aviation known as get-there-itis.
There may have been a sense of get-there-itis. The flight crew knew that they were pushing their 14-hour duty day. It had been a long duty day. The airport's right there. Let's try it. Let's see if we can accomplish the mission. Pilots are goal-oriented. We're mission-oriented. We will stick our nose in there to try and see if we can accomplish the mission. Sometimes we will accomplish that mission, but sometimes we get too far into it that we can't bail out. We don't have any more options, and bad things happen.
For Flight 1420, the pressures of get-there-itis sparked a fatal series of mistakes and misjudgments. At the end of a long day, rushing to beat the storms and get the passengers to their destination, the crew of Flight 1420 made the basic mistake that cost 11 people their lives. They forgot to arm the spoilers.
They were so busy trying to get the plane on the ground that they forgot to do what they needed to do. They didn't have time to do it.
After the accident, American Airlines revised their checklist procedures. Both pilots must now confirm that the spoilers are armed, ready for landing. In October 2001, the NTSB published their report. They concluded that the 2 main causes of the crash were first, the decision to land in a thunderstorm, and second, the pilot's failure to arm the spoilers. American Airlines declined to take part in this film or comment on the findings.
As an investigator, I had over 2 years to basically criticize and determine what the captain was trying to accomplish. That particular captain had seconds to make decisions based on the information he was getting. And while it's unfair for an acts investigator like myself to start pointing the finger, I wasn't there.
I blame them, but I'm not angry per se at them. I don't waste my time with anger on them.
They'd got nothing but flack. You can understand it, but I can't understand a person, wanting to kill himself either. We've been out and visited his grave at the Air Force Academy 3 times, and the guy just got caught up in a bad situation. I mean, been there, done that.
One year after the crash, the survivors of Flight 1420 gathered at the site to remember those who died. For surviving passengers, the effects of the crash are long-lasting and profound.
We, as a family, worked long and hard to work through it. We had many talks. It blew apart a lot of relationships. You find out who your real friends are.
I cannot do enough to mitigate what happened to the individuals on an airplane. Life is a precious thing, and you're definitely here for a very short time. You know, all of a sudden, your life looks like about a second and a half long.
The impact of the crash is something that I try to block out of my mind because I still feel a reaction.
People ask me if I'm okay. Well, no, I'm not okay. No, we'll never be okay. I mean, what is this okay stuff? You're different. And deal with it. I mean, that's the way we're going to be.
The day after it happened, when Adam and I were in the hospital in Samantha, Adam and I got up and we looked out the window and we just couldn't believe that life went on. We just couldn't believe cars were driving and it was sunny and life went on, you know, because for us, life stopped.
In heavy wind and blinding rain, the crew of a passenger jet struggles to land.
Put it down! Put it down!
A terrifying crash landing leads to a desperate fight to survive.
The only thing that matters to me now is to get my daughter Emily and protect her as we blow up.
But we just knew that there were so many passengers in that plane that had not gotten out.
Open the door! Open the door! Mayday, Mayday.
This is a true story based on air traffic control recordings, official reports, and interviews with those involved. Tuesday, August the 2nd, 2005. Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris. 297 passengers are boarding Air France Flight 358, bound for Toronto.
Far aisle, left-hand side. Merci.
Philippe Lacaille is traveling with his wife and 2 of his 4 children. They're stuck at the back of the enormous jet, and they're not sitting together.
It just happened that we were separated from Emily. They had 3 seats together, so we were in the middle section, and Emily was actually sitting a couple of seats ahead of us on the right side, so close to the right wing of the plane.
For Eddie Ho, Flight 358 is the continuation of a trip that began in Johannesburg.
I'm an international student in Canada at Queen's University, and every summer I go back to South Africa.
Ho isn't traveling light.
I was carrying everything that I had, my books to my clothing to tuition money for the year, computer laptops.
This is also another leg in a long journey for Joanne Cordery Bundock, who's returning from a trip to Thailand.
I rerouted myself in the last 2 days before the flight from Bangkok through Paris to come directly to Toronto.
As the passengers continue to board, the flight crew gets settled into the Airbus A340. The captain is 57-year-old Alain Rosaille. He's been with Air France for more than 20 years. His co-pilot is 43-year-old Frédéric No.
Do you want to start, or should I?
Why don't you fly first, and then I'll take over for landing in Toronto. I check the weather.
On this flight, the two men decide that Captain Rosai will handle the takeoff in Paris, and co-pilot No will land in Toronto.
Destination, Toronto Pearson.
Check. Crews often split the duties so that co-pilots can get more experience. Rosai and No are joined by one other person in the cockpit.
I think you've been expecting me. I'm Miles Trochassé. Welcome.
Miles Trochassé is the son of an Air France employee. He's allowed to ride in the cockpit's jump seat for free.
I just want to let you know I've done this before. I promise I'll be quiet.
This Air France plane is one of the safest in the world. Since the A340s first went into service in 1993, they've had an excellent safety record.
Air France 358. Air France 358, runway 27 left. Cleared for takeoff.
Cleared for takeoff. Air France 358. Have a good afternoon, gentlemen.
Just a few minutes before 2 in the afternoon, Flight 358 powers into the sky above Paris. Toronto may be several thousand kilometers away, but the friends and family of those on board Flight 358 are already making plans to meet the plane when it arrives.
Hello? Audrey, I won't forget. I'll make sure to pick up Mom and Dad. No, I won't forget the two brats either. I'll get them all.
Well, we usually make arrangements before we go to France to be picked up. It's easier because we have lots of luggage, you know, and we bring back stuff from France. So it just happened that Julian, our son, was going to spend the summer in Toronto and was available to pick us up.
Sis, I'll give you a call as soon as I get in. Don't worry. I got it covered. Okay? All right. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Center, we have a humidex advisory and extreme heat alert for Toronto, as well as a thunderstorm warning in effect for Toronto.
A regular flight from Paris to Toronto takes about 8 hours. As Air France 358 closes in on Canada, there's little to separate this trip from any other.
I found that their service was amazing. The food was great. They had very good flight attendants.
There were a lot of exchange students from France, you know, like teenagers, you know, coming to Canada for their first time, usually their first flight, and they were very rowdy.
There was a beautiful day on the flight over, and the sun was shining, and it was just blue skies and white clouds and just a lovely day.
The autopilot does most of the work for Captain Alain Rosai and his co-pilot Frédéric No. Just as the two men had planned, No is now in control of the plane.
We have a new weather report.
The two men get regular updates on the weather conditions in Toronto.
Overcast and rainy with a chance of thunderstorms. Temperature in the low 20s.
At Toronto's International Airport, the thunderstorms are already rolling through. Rain, wind, and lightning are hammering the runways. The lightning has already forced airport authorities to declare a red alert. It means that the chance of being struck by lightning is so great that ground crews are not allowed to work on the planes. Just as Flight 358 closes in on Toronto, it's put into a holding pattern. The weather isn't getting any better.
There's going to be a little delay.
Air France 358, so roger on delay.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. I'm sorry to inform you that there'll be a short delay. There's some weather conditions above Toronto, and we're just going to give it a couple of minutes to clear up.
I was very surprised when I heard the captain's announcement that we were going to be delayed in landing for about 25 or 30 minutes because of thunderstorms over Toronto.
While they're not in the storm yet, the crew enters their holding pattern northeast of Toronto. Their alternate airport is almost 300 kilometers away in Ottawa. At the moment, the plane has a little over 7,500 kilograms of fuel in its tanks, more than enough to get them there.
Typically, a pilot will think about the economic impact of diverting to an alternate airport. While that is not a primary decision maker, it is an alternate decision maker as far as if they have to divert, how are the folks going to be transported from that alternate airport back to the destination airport that the airplane was originally going to.
Flying almost 300 passengers to Ottawa would be a logistical nightmare. But the crew can't circle for too long with the fuel they have. If the delay continues, they'll have no choice but to divert.
Air France, Toronto arrival. Your hold is now canceled. You are cleared for a WASI 2 arrival. Maintain 5,000 feet.
Air France 358, roger on cancellation of hold. Cleared for WASI 2 arrival and maintain...
Today, the delay isn't long at all. Although the storm continues to thunder down near the airport, the crew is put into their landing sequence.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. Just wanted to let you know we're beginning our descent into Toronto at this time. We should be on the ground at about 4 p.m. local time.
Usually when they say 45 minutes, it's to be nice. Usually it's like an hour and a half. This time it was like 20 minutes. 20 minutes later, they said, okay, well, now we're going to go down, prepare, for the landing.
With co-pilot Frédéric No at the controls, the plane begins its descent into the storm.
Air France 358, reducing speed to 190.
No isn't prepared for what he's about to face. The storm has a savage surprise in store for everyone on board Flight 358. A brutal summer storm is battering Toronto. Winds and lightning are hammering the airport, making it tense for incoming planes. After a short hold, Air France Flight 358, with 297 passengers aboard, begins descending into the storm.
Flaps 2.
Flaps 2. F-speed.
Gear down.
Landing gear down. Spoilers armed. 4 green.
Landing gear down. Spoilers armed. 4 green.
You'll be fine. Don't worry.
It immediately turned into very dark skies and dark clouds and a little bit bumpy and choppy, and the weather outside was definitely within a thunderstorm. But really and truly, to me, it was just a typical stormy landing. Nothing out of the ordinary.
In the main cabin, though, not everyone is so sure.
The plane was getting very bumpy. There was a lot of turbulence. We were surrounded basically by heavy rain, and this was completely not expected. I didn't expect that.
Air France 358, slow your final approach speed.
Air France 358.
Co-pilot Frédéric No has the plane in position. He's moments from landing.
Air France 358, roger.
Flaps to full.
Flaps full.
It was going darker and darker. We were like in the middle of hundreds and hundreds of lightnings. Like every second we had lightnings all around us. So people were getting nervous, quite nervous. I was getting nervous.
Ahead of the Air France Airbus, 2 other planes have just touched down on the same runway that Flight 358 is heading for.
Air France 358, this is Toronto Tower.
Toronto Tower, Air France 358, go ahead.
You
are cleared to land runway 24 left. Be advised, the preceding aircraft reports braking action is poor, and they estimate the surface winds near the runway as 290 degrees at 15 to 20 knots.
Braking poor, 15 knots, gust to 20. France 358, thank you.
The crew is being sent to runway 24 left, which will allow them to land into the wind. It also happens to be the closest runway to the city's biggest freeway, which is gearing up to handle the evening rush hour traffic. Facing unpredictable winds and a wet runway, the crew prepare for the landing.
Select auto brakes to medium.
Medium is set.
The final approach for landing was hellish. Lightnings were all over. Turbulences were enormous. You could feel the pilot fight with the plane to keep the plane in line with the runway to land, and they had a heck of a time to keep it lined up. I know my son next to me was getting very nervous, and I was nervous to see my daughter actually far from us.
I cinched up my seatbelt tighter than it was, expecting a very hard landing, and the pilot was going to stick it on the runway, or we were maybe going to do a touch and go, and he was going to give it power and go around, because I knew that it was not going to be just a normal landing.
Landing, autopilot, auto thrust off.
At 2 minutes after 4 o'clock, Air France Flight 358 roars over the beginning of the runway.
Put it down!
This landing was more intense and harder than any time I've ever landed in another aircraft.
It's a very difficult landing, and everyone started clapping, and even the lady who's sitting next to me, I remember very clearly, she said, you know, wow, that was an amazing landing. And as soon as she finished that sentence, then all hell broke loose.
We started the plane started violently going up and down, and it felt like we were going 100 miles an hour down a road filled with potholes that were about 3 feet deep.
Immediately you could see this orange aura, and for me it's a picture I will never forget. My daughter was sitting ahead of us on the right side of the plane, and at that time she turned her head towards us, you know, with very wide eyes, you know, looking at us, and her face was surrounded by this enormous aura, orange aura of fire.
Then, moments after touching down, still traveling at 146 kilometers per hour, Flight 358 runs out of room.
At that point that I believed that we were all going to die. It was obvious that no one can survive this kind of thing.
I thought this was it.
The next thing that I can remember is that an announcement came. Ladies and gentlemen, everything's okay. We've stopped now. Well, no kidding. Of course we've stopped now. But I could tell that everything was not okay because I could immediately smell jet fuel.
As the smell of jet fuel fills the cabin, panic quickly spreads.
Everybody was expecting the plane to blow up. It was obvious.
Smoke and flames are spreading quickly. Now it's a desperate struggle to escape.
You hear shouting from the back that there was a fire, and then people started really panicked.
If they don't get out, they have just seconds to live.
We know that about 2 minutes into a fire, in many cases, the environment becomes untenable. So 90 seconds is a good rule that we use in trying to get people out to make sure that they have as much time and safety as possible.
297 passengers are desperate to leave the plane.
The only thing that matters to me now is to get my daughter Emily, who's sitting like 2 seats ahead of me, get her onto me, and protect her as we blow up.
Am I going to try to get my luggage, my laptop? And then I thought to myself, what if I would die trying to get my laptop? I just said, okay, I've got to get out. I've got to get out.
Flight 358 has 8 possible emergency exits, but seconds after the crash, most of them aren't opened.
People were crawling over the seats, they were pushing each other, they were just basically all for yourself.
Hey, stay calm, please. Please stay calm. Be all right.
Open the door! Open the door!
And I could see the air attendant there struggling with the fact that should I or should I not open this door, because the fire was raging just in front of it.
If the fuel tanks rupture and we have a lot of fuel that gets out either onto the ground, well then there's enough heat and fire there that would cause the airplane skin to melt in a couple minutes.
At the front of the plane, thick smoke is pouring in through one of the open doors. Joanne Cordery-Bundock races to the other side of the plane.
The gentleman in front of me had his bag with him, and he was kind of fumbling around with that and trying to take that down the slide. He was a rather large man, and the slide did not deploy the entire way, so I kind of bailed off the side above him and hit the ground.
Eddie Ho has found an exit too, but there's no slide.
And people pushing me forward, I couldn't even control myself. And I was like, I don't want to jump as well because, it was 5 meters down at least.
Is he okay? Is he okay?
In the cockpit, Captain Rosai has been badly injured when his seat was ripped off the floor by the force of the crash. As precious seconds tick by, the flight attendant near the Lacais manages to open the exit door. Even though passengers are confronted with the flames and smoke of the burning engine, they jump out of the plane.
So pushed them down, my wife went down, I went down. We just ran up as fast as we could through torn metal and thorns and through whatever was left of the ground where the plane was.
Once the fire gets inside the airplane, all of the furnishings are much like the furnishings in your house, and there are foams and materials that, when they catch on fire, produce toxic gases, and that's really the most important lethal aspect of the fire.
Basically, you just had to jump. So what I did was, I prayed quickly and I closed my eyes and jumped.
Emergency workers are able to reach the burning jet just 52 seconds after it crashes. But with the threat of an explosion, it's dangerous to get too close.
It was very difficult to see anything due to the rain that was coming down. There was a lot of smoke engulfing the plane, some fire that was still ongoing, as well as you could see that some of the parts of the plane had broken off, some of the wheels that were at the side of the roadway, as well as portions of the plane's wings that had broken off.
Philippe Lacaille and his family struggle up the hill the plane has just plowed down.
You know, and at that point, the plane blew up. Once, twice, 3 times. So you could feel and hear this enormous explosion actually taking place. On the first one, I looked at the first one because I just couldn't believe my eyes. You know, I could see, I think, pieces of luggage, things flying up in the air. You know. And of course, at that time, I figured, oh my God, you know, that could have been us. You know.
We had a perfect view of the airplane and see this black smoke coming out the side of the airplane, and the yellow and the orange and the red flames shooting out. We were fine, but we just knew that there were so many passengers in that plane that had not gotten out.
August the 2nd, 2005. Air France Flight 358 has crashed off its runway in Toronto. Flames are tearing at the fuselage. Smoke is pouring from the ruined jet. Dazed passengers are stumbling from the plane.
Passengers that were coming up, again, were very rain-soaked and muddy from coming up the hill. There were several individuals that once they got up there were crying and a bit emotional, as well as looking around for other passengers or family or friends that may have been with them at the time.
About 35 minutes ago, a plane ran off the runway at Toronto's Pearson Airport.
Footage of the crash quickly appears on local TV stations. Philippe Lacaille's daughter Audrey is one of the many people shocked by the pictures.
She turned on her TV, and here we go. There was the Air France crash right here, live in front of her, you know, burning, exploding right in front of her eyes.
250 people on board. We have not had any reason to make a statement yet as to whether anybody has survived or escaped.
Philippe Lacaille's son Julien is waiting for his father at the airport. He has no idea what's just happened to the Air France flight.
What? What do you mean, where am I? I'm at the airport waiting for mom and dad. Like, you... What?
So Joey didn't know anything, and he was there at the airport. And she says, well, you know what? I think you're going to have to wait a long time because the airplane just crashed.
One of the busiest highways in North America borders the airport. Just before rush hour, it's packed with thousands of vehicles. Drivers slow down, captivated by the terrifying sight of the burning plane. Some of the passengers who've escaped the plane stumble, dazed and shaken, right onto the edge of the highway. Passing motorists stop to take them to the airport.
At this point, there was only about 25 or 30 people with me in the airport. And here, you're also beginning to think, is this all there is?
As people are brought in, airport employees struggle to account for all the passengers and crew.
They were totally disorganized. There's no announcements being made. There's nothing of any kind of organization, and you're in this little crowded area with all the irate passengers waiting to be processed. Some people even said, you know, the first disaster was the plane crash, and the second disaster is exactly how it was handled afterwards.
Relatives wait desperately for any news. Julien Lacaille is just one of many who fears the worst.
For at least an hour and a half, he thought we were dead. That's a shame because, of course, we panicked. We were scared to death. But the families that were waiting for the passengers, they were even more scared because it lasted much longer. They really believed deep down that their family members were dead.
Finally, hours after the crash, passengers who have waiting family members are reunited.
Julian! Julian! Oh, you okay? Oh my God! You're okay. How did you...
We finally met up with Julian. It was 11 o'clock at night. It was, you know, God, we're so lucky. We're so lucky. We're alive, you know. It's hard to explain, but it's like you're giving a second chance, you know. Here's my son, you know. Maybe I didn't tell him I loved him, you know, when I left for France. Now it's time to say it right away. It was a very nice moment. A very, very deep moment.
It's just one of dozens of reunions. It takes hours to confirm, but by early evening, Air France and the local airport authorities can make the incredible announcement. Remarkably, every single passenger and all the members of the crew of Flight 358 have managed to escape the burning wreckage of their plane. The next day, smoke and charred wreckage are all that remain of Air France Flight 358. The Airbus A340 is a sophisticated, highly engineered plane with a glowing safety record. What had gone so terribly wrong? Canada's Transportation Safety Board quickly begins investigating the accident.
Landing, autopilot, auto thrust off.
Rain and lightning had been battling the airport all afternoon. Was it simply bad weather that caused this crash?
Put it down! Put it down!
Neither the pilot nor the co-pilot have spoken publicly about the crash.
We have to evacuate now!
Citing lawsuits that were filed soon after, Air France has kept all of its employees who were on the plane from speaking to the media.
Is he okay? I don't know. Is he okay? I don't know.
But former Air France trainer Hervé Labarthe has spoken to Captain Rosaille.
We spoke, let me think, for half an hour. He told me that this is the crucial point, that he has control. More specifically, informed control that he had reached the point where he would have to consider diverting. What he told me is that control informed him that they would soon open the runway. There was, of course, a lot of lightning, rain and turbulence can have a devastating effect. Instruments become more difficult to read, the aircraft is harder to handle.
Investigators discover that as the crew struggled for control in the cockpit, on the ground, delicate instruments used to measure the wind at the runway were destroyed by lightning. With the ground equipment destroyed, they were relying on their onboard systems for information about wind conditions.
The onboard equipment only gives them the actual wind direction and speed on the nose of the aircraft at that exact time. It does not predict ahead of the aircraft. So the pilots really have no way of knowing what lies ahead of them.
But two planes had touched down just minutes before the Air France flight on the same runway. The crews of those planes did their best to inform air traffic control of the tricky conditions.
Air France 358, this is Toronto Tower.
Toronto Tower, Air France 358, go ahead.
You are cleared to land runway 24 left. Be advised, preceding aircraft reports braking action is poor, and they estimate the surface winds near the runway as 290 degrees at 15 to 20 knots.
Braking poor, 15 knots.
20-knot winds are strong, but are well within the allowable range for landing an A340. But when investigators study radar images of the airport, they discover quite a different story. As Flight 358 landed, a sharp line of rain moved across the runway from north to south. It was driven by a sudden gust of wind of up to 33 knots. The crew of the Air France jet had to deal with conditions that were much worse than they were expecting.
Landing, autopilot, auto thrust off.
33 knots is the demonstrated maximum crosswind for an A340, and that would be on a dry runway. So when you say 33 knots at 90 degrees, you're encroaching on the limits of the aircraft.
Closely studying the airport, investigators uncover another piece of the puzzle. Maintenance issues and the storm itself were forcing air traffic controllers to use runway 24 left for landings. It's the shortest runway at the airport, almost 650 meters shorter than some of the others. Blinded by rain, driven by unexpected winds, and landing on the shortest runway at the airport, Flight 358 was in a dangerous position.
Over the previous 4 hours, they had been made aware of the terrible storms and red alerts. And that was for me my biggest concern. Were they perhaps overtired? Were they lax, victims of routine? In any case, it's obvious that they hadn't gauged the extent of the danger.
It's evident that the flight crew didn't perceive the information that they were getting from these various sources as being threatening. Therefore, they attempted to make a landing.
But even in bad conditions, even on a short runway, the crew had 3,000 meters in which to land their plane. It should have been enough. To find out why it wasn't, investigators turned to the past. In 1999, an eerily similar accident took place in Little Rock, Arkansas.
Damn, we're off course. I can't see it. Way off.
Struggling with unpredictable weather, the crew of an American Airlines jet landed their plane, only to have it skid off the runway. 11 people were killed. Greg Feith helped investigate that crash.
One of the first things that I thought about was déjà vu. Having the first bits of information about the Air France accident, it reminded me so much of the American Airlines accident.
In the Little Rock crash, Feith discovered that the crew had made a critical mistake, which contributed significantly to the accident.
They hadn't followed all of the checklist procedures, and they didn't have the ground spoilers armed, which basically degrades the efficiency of lift on the wing and settles the airplane heavily on the main wheels so that braking action is more effective.
Spoilers are only one of several ways pilots of passenger jets stop their massive planes. Reverse thrusters are used to redirect the engine power forward as the plane lands, and sophisticated brakes help slow the jets down. To rule out any mechanical fault, all 3 systems are examined by investigators of the Air France crash. One of the brakes on Flight 358 was destroyed in the fire, but the 7 other sets of brakes are all tested after the accident. All of them are working properly.
Flaps 2.
Flaps 2. F-speed.
Investigators in Toronto also discover that, unlike in the Little Rock crash, this time the spoilers had deployed properly.
Landing gear down, spoilers armed, 4 green.
And when the engines are examined, the reverse thrusters are deployed. No obvious mechanical fault can be found. As the investigation continues, a French newspaper prints a bombshell. Le Figaro publishes a story claiming that the thrust reversers, which use the jet's engines to slow it down, were not turned on until the plane had been on the runway for more than 12 seconds.
As for Captain Rosay, he confirmed the newspaper report. His explanation was that his co-pilot had tense-stopped and was having difficulty controlling the lateral movement of the plane. No doubt because of the strong crosswinds and because the runway was so slippery, his hand was clamped tightly on the throttle release lever, which prevented the captain from reaching it himself. So the reverse thrusters could not be activated.
et les réverses ne sont pas sorties.
Shortly after the newspaper story appears, investigators publish their initial report. It confirms Le Figaro's version of events. Canada's Transportation Safety Board reveals that while the thrusters were found in the on position at the crash site, they had not been deployed as soon as the plane landed. In fact, it took 17 seconds before they reached maximum power.
The delay was a question raised in the report, and I wouldn't want to hazard a guess as to why there was such a delay or what was the cause of it. I just know that pilots, as a rule, want to get those reversers in as quickly as possible for maximum stopping.
The investigators reveal other confusing facts about the last few seconds of Flight 358. When it came over the start of the runway, it was twice as high as it should have been. And when it did land, it was nearly halfway down the runway.
Put it down! Put it down!
In these stormy conditions, the crew didn't have enough time to stop.
Once they found that the airplane had floated down the runway, the pilot has to make the decision whether we stay on the ground and try to salvage this bad situation, or we abort the landing, power up, pull up, and go around, get our stuff together, and then come back for a second landing.
Air France 358.
But decisions in a cockpit are joint decisions. The captain and the first officer work together.
Si le commandant
If the captain sees that landing will be difficult, he must open throttle and go through abort landing procedures. That's his duty.
C'est une obligation.
And of course, the co-pilot is also allowed to be the first to act. But the captain's duty is to avoid at all costs a lengthy touchdown. That is clear.
Pour ne pas laisser se dérouler un atterrissage trop long, ça c'est clair.
By the time the plane touched down, it had only 1,500 meters to stop. And when it did land, critical seconds were lost when the reverse thrusters weren't engaged.
Est-ce que l'action des réverses immédiate
Would it have made a difference to immediately activate the reverse thrusters? Of course it would. Since reverse function reaches its peak efficiency at high speed, that is the exact moment of touchdown, that's what reverse is there for. It's all a matter of aerodynamic braking. The other problem is that the wheels touched ground in the middle of the runway, and reverse or no reverse, at that point it was already too late, as was pointed out by the head of the inquiry. That being said, if the reverse thrusters had been activated immediately, the plane would have come to a stop more quickly.
Il serait sorti moins et moins vite.
In heavy storms, the margin for error is razor thin. On this rain-filled afternoon, sudden wind, a long landing, and a short runway sealed the fate of everyone on board Flight 358. What concerns some in the aviation industry isn't this particular flight, but the reality that overruns are far too common. They happen all around the world. And safety procedures that could stop them are not in place. In August 2005, Air France Flight 358 crashed off the end of a runway in Toronto. It was a horrifying incident, yet amazingly everyone survived. But Flight 358 wasn't the only jet to go off the end of a runway in 2005. Worldwide, there were 37 other runway overruns. And the causes of all these accidents were remarkably similar.
There are a number of causal factors that occur again and again in runway overrun accidents. The weather conditions, the state of the runway surface. It can be wet, it can be icy, it can have snow on it, speed in excess of a normal approach speed for the aircraft that does not then bleed off as the aircraft attempts to land. And these factors occur again and again in runway overrun accidents.
Unlike the crash at Toronto, some overruns are deadly. This Southwest Airlines flight in Chicago slid off its runway several months after the Air France crash. A small child was killed in a car that was driving on the nearby highway.
Many older airports in particular in big cities which have expanded out towards the airport in the course of their growth, are constrained in the area that they can use for overruns.
You have to consider what happens when the runway is contaminated. Snow, ice, standing water. That will degrade the stopping performance of the airplane. Add to that a tailwind component, which was existent at the time that Air France landed. That, in combination with the contaminated runway, can jeopardize the landing performance and in fact increase it probably by 50%.
The International Civil Aviation Organization recommends that every airport have a 300-meter safety zone at the end of runways that handle international flights. Canadian standards are a little less strict. They call for a 60-meter overrun area and recommend another 90 meters on top of that. Runway 24 left meets the low end of those recommendations.
There was another runway overrun accident to the runway in Toronto, which was very closely aligned with the runway that is there at the moment, in 1978, when a DC-9, an Air Canada DC-9, rejected a takeoff and ran into the ravine.
Well, the plane started to break, and then there was just nothing, and then we dropped over the edge. There was about a 50-foot drop, I guess, at the end of the runway. We just went over the top, and then there was a heck of a bang, and people and seats all over the place.
2 people died in the 1978 accident. A coroner's inquest after the crash recommended that the gully be filled in, but it never was.
It's a steep ravine. It has about a 50-foot drop-off, and when you take a large, complicated and fragile piece of machinery like a commercial aircraft and you drop it 50 feet, then it tends to break.
There is a possible solution to runway overruns, but it's not being used in Toronto or many other international airports. It's called EMAS, or Engineered Material Arresting Systems.
It's a form of artificial stone or artificial gravel, which has a certain depth. And anybody who's ridden a bicycle into a gravel pit knows that a bicycle stops very quickly and it can be almost impossible to pedal it out. And the same thing happens to airplanes.
Several airports in the US use the system, but most international airports do not.
It's very much more effective than friction braking, and it's certainly incomparably more effective than thrust reverse and spoilers. And any one of these systems, when properly engineered, can stop a large airplane, no matter what the runway surface conditions, in a very short distance.
We have to evacuate now!
But one vital air safety guideline was met when Flight 358 crashed. In spite of the smoke and the spreading fire, the crew of the crippled plane made sure that all the passengers escaped in just 90 seconds.
It's just a miracle that all of those people were able to evacuate the airplane as quickly as they did before the airplane was consumed.
The Air France flight was particularly noteworthy in that everybody got out, essentially unscathed. I know there were some injuries, but everyone got out. So I think it was noteworthy, and it was very good evacuation from that perspective.
Captain Alain Rosaille may never fly for Air France again. His injuries required extensive physical therapy after the crash. At the time, he was less than 3 years from retirement.
Every morning, Captain Rosaille relives the experience, coming face to face with the flames, the noise, the crash. And it made him sad to end his career on that note, having destroyed his plane. That's the worst possible fate for a pilot, the worst outcome.
The co-pilot, Frédéric No, is suspended for 3 months after the accident. By early the next year, he's back on duty with Air France. There are reports that after he helped Captain Rosaille out of the cockpit, he was the last person off the plane. The passengers deal with the crash in their own ways.
Well, I went through nightmares almost every single night, flashbacks during the day. Couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat. I questioned myself, why am I here? It's frightening, to be in such a state. And it has taught me to be strong.
we really need to take seriously those safety commands and evacuation information, because you never know. It was a perfect flight. There's not any indications that anything can go wrong, and it's right at the very last second that everything happens. So thank goodness I'm here to be able to talk about it now.
Open the door! Open the door!
There's a lot of negative in the accident, and there's a lot of positive. The negative is, oh my God, I'm gonna die. Oh my God, it's horrible. Oh, I have these nightmares, and yes, I'm traumatized, and oh, my kids are traumatized. However, you have the positives, and the positives are, gee, I'm alive. I have been given a second chance. I have been given a second life. And all of us, my wife and my children and myself, we all experience the same positive effects of the crash, which is we have to give back. We have to do something for others. We have to extend our heart out, our compassion to people who need it. It's almost therapeutic for us, The more you do for others, the better you're gonna feel. So for me, I figured, if I can extend my heart out to others, maybe it's gonna help me as well.
New Hope, Georgia, April the 4th, 1977.
Hello? My husband called me and he said, honey, we've got some bad weather coming in.
Boys, come on in now. Nasty weather's coming.
One of the worst storms in years is moving across the South. Sadie Hurst rushes her children to safety.
We heard this tremendous noise. When I got to the top of the basement steps to close the door, I saw a red reflection like fire in the door. That's when I saw what was happening.
72 people are killed when a Southern Airways DC-9 falls from the sky.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
May I see your boarding pass, please?
Certainly.
Just down the aisle on the right, sir. Enjoy your flight.
Thank you.
Boarding pass?
81 passengers board Southern Airways Flight 242, a DC-9 bound for Atlanta, Georgia. Many of them are military personnel from nearby bases. Captain Bill McKenzie and First Officer Lyman Keel have been shuttling passengers across the American South all day.
Who's got the lander?
Not me. Says the captain.
Ignition, sir.
Pilots regularly exchange tasks on long days like this one. First Officer Lyman Keel will be handling this leg of the flight. He's an experienced Navy pilot who's been with Southern Airways for 4 years. Before their last takeoff, the crew was handed a weather report for the airports along their route.
Looks like you guys got a good one coming.
The DC-9 was introduced in 1965 to fly frequent short flights. Both of its engines are mounted to the rear fuselage rather than the wings. It was designed for takeoff on shorter runways.
We had a 13 landing day, which was a lot of small stops, about 20 or 30 minute legs in between, and it was sort of the tour of the South.
Skies have been smooth all afternoon, but the weather's worsening. The flight crew is prepared for turbulence.
It was raining in Huntsville, and they said, oh, it's going to be some bad weather, don't serve. So we did not serve from Huntsville to Atlanta, which is a very short route, and we were delighted not to be serving.
I was a little surprised that we took off when we did. I really thought we'd taxi out to the end of the runway and hold for a while because the weather looked so bad. But we taxied out and immediately took off.
At 3:54 p.m., the DC-9 takes off into a hard rain. The short hop to Atlanta should take just 25 minutes. As Southern Airways 242 flies away from Huntsville, the National Weather Service tracks weather that's far worse than the pilots expect. Tornadoes are touching down all across the South.
The weather in the Southeast in the United States can be very treacherous. High humidities, high temperatures are a prescription for thunderstorms. And so with all of that kind of moisture in the air and the high convective heating, you're going to have very large thunderstorms that are associated with heavy rains, hail, icing conditions, and extreme winds. And of course, tornadoes that will be spawned from that kind of action.
Huntsville Air Traffic Control has some concerns about the gathering storm.
Southern Airways 242, I'm painting a line of weather which appears to be moderate to possibly heavy precipitation, starting about 5 miles ahead.
Okay, we're in the rain right now. It doesn't look much heavier than what we're in right now, does it?
It's not a solid mass, but it appears to be a little bit heavier than what you're in right now.
In 1977, most airliners are equipped with the Bendix weather radar. Pilots are trained to avoid regions that appear bright. Where there's light, there's bad weather.
I can't read that. This looks like rain, Bill. What do you think? There's a hole.
There's a hole right there. That's all I see.
The pilots spot a dark area on their radar, a passageway through the storm. They plan to navigate between towering thunderheads over 14,000 meters.
Coming over, we had pretty good radar. I believe right straight ahead. There. The next few miles is probably the best way we can go.
But as they head towards the storm system, they get an ominous report from Memphis Air Traffic Control.
Attention, all aircraft. SIGMET. Tennessee, Southern Louisiana, Mississippi.
SIGMET is short for Significant Meteorological Information. A warning to pilots that dangerous weather is in the region.
Here we go. Hold them, cowboy.
Pilots don't want to be within 50 miles of a lot of those types of thunderstorms for the very reason that the airplane may not be able to handle it, and or the pilots may not be able to control the airplane flying into that kind of activity.
Mackenzie and Keel take a harder look at their weather radar.
It looks heavy. Nothing's going through that.
Mysteriously, the gap the pilots thought they'd spotted no longer seems to exist.
That's a hole, isn't it?
It's not showing a hole, is it?
The storm suddenly gets much worse.
Never heard such loud hail in my life, and in beating on the, sides of the airplane was extremely deafening.
The hail was probably the loudest noise I've ever heard. It sounded like I was in a metal barrel with someone throwing rocks at me.
Please keep your seatbelts fastened. We should be out of this shortly.
Hail the size of baseballs hammers the DC-9, breaking the plane's windshield.
The pilots of Southern 242 had to raise their voices audibly to be heard above the unholy tattoo of this hail, which was buckshotting the airplane. These pilots had never been through anything like this before in their lives.
Which way do we cross here or go out? I don't know how we get through here, Bill.
I know. You're just gonna have to go out.
Yeah, right across that bend.
All clear left, approximately right now. I think we can cut across there.
Mackenzie and Keel desperately seek an escape route from the storm. But as they do, the emergency escalates. The plane loses all electrical power. Without power, Keel must keep the aircraft level without an artificial horizon.
Now the pilots are left to look back out the window and try and orient the airplane with the horizon.
But surrounded by thick cloud, a horizon is difficult to find. It's almost impossible for Lyman Keel to get his bearings.
Southern 242, what's your speed?
Atlanta Air Traffic Control tries to make contact with Southern Airways. They receive no response.
Southern 242, Atlanta, what's your speed?
After I realized that we had a disaster in progress, or something was wrong, I got up and started briefing my passengers.
The flight attendants were very quick in giving us emergency landing instructions. There was not very much time for anyone to start panicking.
Got it back. Got it back, Bill. Got it back. Got it back.
After 36 seconds in the dark, power returns. The instruments come alive and the radio begins working again. Air traffic control finally gets through to Mackenzie and Keel.
Maintain 15,000, if you understand me. Maintain 15,000, Southern 242.
Southern Airways Flight 242 has been instructed to fly at 4,600 meters. But the plane has fallen to almost 4,200 meters.
We're trying to get it up there. While I was looking out at the front of the left engine, I could see the hail continuing to put more and more dents into the cowling around the engine and into the cone in the center of the engine. And the engine was starting to make sounds like it was quitting.
Okay, 242, we just got our windshield busted. We'll try to get it back up to 15. We're at 14.
Southern 242, say you're at 14 now?
Left engine won't spool.
Our left engine just cut out.
You say you lost an engine and busted a windshield?
Yes, sir.
My God. The other engine's going too.
Got the other engine going too.
Southern 242, say again.
Stand by. We lost both engines.
Both engines are now out. This DC-9 is a glider, and it's falling at 56 feet per second. They're at 14,000 feet. They don't have a lot of time.
Get us a vector to a clear area, Atlanta.
Lyman Keel adjusts his course to navigate his plane out of the storm. Captain Mackenzie must restart the engines, or they'll be forced to make an emergency landing. Without engines, Southern Airways Flight 242 is plummeting from the sky. There's also another dire consequence of the engine failure. Normally, the engines generate electricity for the instruments, radios, and hydraulics. When the engines quit, all of these systems fail.
APU deployed.
The APU, the auxiliary power unit, is a backup power generator. It will provide electricity to the plane, but it will take more than 2 minutes for it to power up.
Once they had finished their instructions and there was simply a waiting period before we landed, we turned to each other and said that we would all get through this together, and we held hands for a moment.
When the second engine quit, I wasn't aware of what was going on around me. I was so focused on trying to figure out a way to save myself. I knew that sometimes the tail breaks off in an accident, and I felt the further back I could get, the better.
There we go.
After 2 minutes without systems, the auxiliary power unit finally kicks in. The pilots may not have engines, but at least they now have power.
We lost both engines. How about getting us a vector to the nearest place?
Captain Mackenzie needs directions to an airport. The flight can only stay airborne for another 6 minutes. Dorbin's Air Force Base is 32 kilometers away. It has a runway that's long enough for a DC-9. It also has full emergency services.
Southern 242, roger. Turn right heading 100. Will be vectors for a straight-in approach to Dobbins. Runway 11.
What's Dobbins weather, Bill? How far is it? How far is it?
Lyman Keel knows Dorbin's Air Force Base intimately. He trained there, and it's now his home base as a Navy Reserve pilot. He's landed there frequently.
Declare an emergency, Bill.
Right now, Keel's familiarity with Dorbin's is the only advantage this crew has. Less than 16 kilometers away lies the town of New Hope, Georgia. Sadie Hurst sees no signs of an advancing storm.
It was an absolutely beautiful day. The children were playing outside. They were riding their bicycles up and down the driveway.
Hello? Hey, you.
My husband worked in Atlanta, and he kept his radio on the Huntsville radio station. And he called me, and he said, honey, we've got some bad weather coming in. He said, you need to get the kids in.
Boys, come on in now. Nasty weather's coming. Come in now. All right, flashlights and batteries, Stephen.
Ordinarily, tornadoes come with bad weather, you know, dark clouds and rain and hail. But we didn't see any of that.
Southern Airways 242 finally breaks through the storm clouds into clear skies. The plane descends steadily through 2,100 meters.
Get those engines started.
Once the engines failed, the workload in the cockpit increased substantially. In this particular instance, the first officer was the, quote, pilot flying. He was the one that was actually manipulating the flight controls and maneuvering the airplane. The captain, on the other hand, was now running checklist and trying to troubleshoot.
Listen, we lost both engines, and I can't tell you the implications of this. We only got 2 engines. And how far is Dobbins now?
Southern 242, 19 miles. Do you have 1 engine running now?
Negative. No engines.
I didn't know what was wrong, but I could tell something was wrong. I went and opened the cockpit door simply to tell them we're ready for whatever.
Just don't stall this thing out.
No, I won't.
Bill, what's going on?
Not now, Kathy. Sit down.
You could tell they were afraid. I understood that they were afraid just for the sound of their voice. So I understood that there was something very dangerous going on, but I had no idea what.
Down to only 1,400 meters, the plane is still 27 kilometers from Dorbin's Air Force Base.
Ask him if there's anything between here and Dobbins.
What?
Ask him if there's anything between here and Dobbins.
Is there an airport between our position and Dobbins?
Southern 242, no, sir. Closest airport is Dobbins.
First Officer Lyman Keel doesn't think he can get the DC-9 as far as Dorbin's Air Force Base. He's lost too much altitude.
I doubt we're gonna make it, but we're trying everything to get something started.
Roger. Well, there is Cartersville. You're about 10 miles south of Cartersville, 15 miles west of Dobbins.
Keel needs a closer airport. Cartersville seems like a good choice.
We'll take a vector to that, yes. We'll have to go there.
Can you give us a vector to Cartersville?
All right, turn left heading 360. We'll be direct vector to Cartersville.
Air traffic controllers in Atlanta see no other options. They direct Flight 242 to Cartersville Airport. As the pilots seek out an airport, the flight attendants still don't know what type of landing to prepare for.
They wouldn't talk to me. When I looked in the door, the whole windshield was cracked. So what do we do?
I think we've lost both the engines.
I thought so.
Kathy, have you briefed all your passengers?
Mm-hmm.
I realized I was in an emergency situation and I felt like I was going to die, but I decided I would do everything I could to try to help my chances. I had previously collected some blankets and pillows and had gotten my leather jacket off the overhead rack. And I arranged those to make a nest as much as I could for myself.
With tornadoes in the forecast, the community of New Hope is braced for a different type of danger.
After a couple hours of playing outside, my mother called us in to come in because there was bad weather coming our way. We came into the house, and Mother had told us about what was going on, and she said that we need to get downstairs to prepare for the bad weather that was coming.
Southern Airways Flight 242 has lost too much altitude. The pilots come to the frightening conclusion that at the rate they're falling, they can't make it to Cartersville. They must prepare to land now.
I'm picking out a clear field.
Bill, you have to find me a highway.
Let's get the next clear open field.
No, Bill.
See a highway over there. No cars.
Right there. Is that straight?
No.
We'll have to take it.
Lyman Keel decides to bring the plane down onto a rural highway, Georgia State Highway 92. Captain Bill McKenzie radios Atlanta Air Traffic Control with the bad news.
We're putting it on the highway. We're down to nothing.
The clock runs out on Southern Airways 242.
Sweet Jesus.
With no engines, First Officer Lyman Keel lines up the aircraft for an emergency landing on the highway that runs through New Hope, Georgia.
In the last minute, we did a steep left bank in which we were able to see the pine trees that were very close to the aircraft.
Flaps.
They're down to 50.
Oh, God, Bill. I hope we can do it.
Without training on how to land a DC-9 with no engines, First Officer Lyman Keel's attempt is entirely improvised.
Lyman Keel is a young man who has just come back from the proving ground of Southeast Asia, where he was a naval aviator. He learned the niceties of landing on a rolling, pitching aircraft carrier in the South China Sea in the middle of the night. What he was confronted with right now was even a greater test, the greatest test he had ever confronted in his life as an airman.
I'm gonna land right over that guy.
There's a car ahead.
I got it. I got it now. I got it.
Brace for impact!
The Southern Airways flight touches down on State Highway 92.
When the aircraft touched down, the first touchdown was very, very nice. It was smooth. It seemed like it was going to work and everything was going to turn out okay. And then it immediately bounced back up in the air and slammed down.
Each bump that we made seemed to be harder and louder than the previous one.
The plane smashes into New Hope.
Before the plane completely stopped moving, there was fire blowing through the cabin. I felt my face burning, even though I tried to cover it with my leather jacket.
We heard this tremendous noise.
Large sections of Southern Airways 242 litter the entire length of New Hope.
Come on, damn it.
I got my seatbelt loose after a few tries and turned toward the rear of the airplane, and I saw a spot of light. I got up and ran for that light. I could not believe I was alive. I just could not believe it.
Where I found myself after we woke up, sort of indescribable. I was sitting by the front entry door. We have a coat closet that was adjacent to it and the back wall that the jump seat's strapped to. All three of those walls had collapsed and rolled into like a little triangle ball area. And there was just enough room for me inside. And I could see a crack of light, and I thought, I'm going through that crack of light, come hell or high water.
In the very next instant, as if I had just blinked my eyes, instead of seeing the carpet between my feet, I suddenly was looking at blue sky above me. I realized I was lying flat on my back in the dirt. Everything to the left of me was flaming wreckage. I didn't even recognize it as being the plane that I had just been thrown out of. I thought it was maybe a house that we had hit.
Stewardess Sandy Pearl also escapes safely. She's able to help others. Survivors flee the flaming wreckage.
When I got to the top of the basement steps to close the door, I saw a red reflection like fire in the door. That's when I saw what was happening. I saw smoke and fire. And the people that were coming toward me, they weren't screaming, they weren't yelling, they were quiet.
Everything was on fire, and I could see people running toward a house.
I need to use your phone.
I wanted to call the local people or Southern or somebody and say, we've just landed somewhere and we need help.
It just became a blur. They just kept coming.
You help her.
I got back to the kitchen and I was just circled by people. They knew they were in a house, and I guess they felt safe, and they needed somebody to help them. I was still frantic. I was still trying to move as quickly as possible and do as much as I could at the time.
And I'll remember to the day I died just staring there at the trees burning and pine trees burning and pieces of aircraft. It was so unreal. I've never seen anything like it and never want to see anything like that again.
"72 people, including pilots Lyman Keel and Bill McKenzie, die in the crash of Southern Airways Flight 242. Investigators would soon uncover a tragic series of miscues and coincidences that caused the plane to crash.
Southern Flight 242 crashed after the DC-9 jet lost power in both engines. The plane had just flown through a violent hailstorm on a flight from Huntsville, Alabama to Atlanta.
I saw the plane as it came veering down, hit the treetops. We thought it was a tornado at first. Vehicles, people that was in this grocery store yard and vehicles, it actually hit them.
A family of 7 is killed instantly when the plane hit their car.
They were just leaving the store about the time that the flight tried to land on the highway. And then, of course, I think they hit the gas pumps and they exploded and everything around was on fire. And like I said, they were in the car and perished during the explosion and fire.
Investigators from the National Transportation Safety Board arrived within hours of the accident. This is the second major blow to Southern Airways' safety record. In 1970, Flight 932, carrying the Marshall University football team, crashed in West Virginia. Everyone on board was killed.
There are always many questions that investigators have to find answers to. The two primary questions that needed to be answered by the board were what were the weather conditions and what caused both engines on a two-engine airplane to flame out that resulted in the pilots having to make an emergency landing on a highway in a small town.
The storm that Flight 242 flew into was a monster. Why had a crew so familiar with weather in the South flown headfirst into it?
That's a hole, isn't it?
It's not showing a hole, is it?
Investigators listened to the cockpit voice recorder for any clues about the decisions made by the crew as they were entering the thunderstorm.
That's a hole, isn't it?
It's not showing a hole, is it?
They learned that the pilots relied heavily on their weather radar as they approached the storm. But it appears to have deceived them.
All clear left, approximately right now. I think we can cut across there.
One of the limitations of the radar that the crew of Flight 242 was using is signal attenuation. That is that the beam that is projected from the radar unit out to look at the weather and return is diffused, so that the picture that is depicted in the cockpit that the crew is looking at may not be accurate.
Weather radar sends out radio waves. Those waves bounce off storm clouds ahead and return to the aircraft. But if precipitation is extremely intense, the radio waves can be deflected away. The radar unit might then interpret the lack of returning waves as a clear path ahead.
Those inaccuracies are hard to decipher, and if the crew is depending solely or very intently on the radar to guide them through the precipitation, they may be making decisions that aren't based on accurate information.
The storm that entangled Southern Airways 242 is one of the worst to hit the United States in 3 years. The crew didn't encounter a tornado, but it was battered by torrential rain and heavy hail.
Which way do we cross here or go out? I don't know how we get through here, Bill.
What Keel and Mackenzie read as a clear area ahead was in fact the heaviest part of the storm. They flew straight for it.
The other engine's going too.
Got the other engine going too.
Southern 242, say again.
Stand by. We lost both engines.
Once inside the storm, the DC-9's engines failed. But a turbofan engine is designed to ingest huge amounts of rain and even hail. Precipitation alone should not have shut them down. Investigators study what's left of the DC-9's engines for clues. They need to know if some mechanical failure caused both engines to fail inside the storm.
Well, initially I was puzzled as to how the engines could be involved in the cause of this accident, but I was very anxious to get there to see the engines myself to find out if there was any sort of visible failure in the engines.
Pratt & Whitney, the manufacturer of the engines, assigns Al Weaver to advise the NTSB investigation. The engines are moved to Atlanta Airport for a closer inspection.
And when they lifted the engines up in the vertical direction in the hangar, I could hear the tinkling and pieces fell out through the front of the engine onto the floor. I reached over and picked up those pieces, and I recognized them immediately as part of the high compressor blading deep within inside the engine.
Al Weaver discovers that the pieces that fell from the engine were broken blades from the compressor. Jet engines need pressurized air for combustion. 2 separate compressors inside the engine are made up of dozens of steel blades. The rapidly spinning blades force air to the back of the engine. The pressurized air is ignited in the combustion chamber, creating thrust. Weaver notices that the compressor blades from Flight 242 are badly bent or fatigued. The way they're bent tells him they were damaged in the air, not when the plane hit the ground.
And we know that that fatiguing and the type of fatigue that we could observe with our eye is caused by the repetitive surging of the engine over and over.
A surge occurs when the airflow through an engine gets interrupted. Pressure builds up between the compressors instead of behind them. Without the back pressure, air from the combustion chamber moves to the front of the engine. The engine briefly loses power. Next, investigators need to find out if the repetitive surging was caused by the engines inhaling massive amounts of rain. When an engine ingests rain, it has to convert it into a gas before it can pump it out as exhaust. That process uses energy and slows down the engines. Investigators conclude that with so much rain to convert, the engines couldn't maintain enough power to run the generators. That's what caused the first power outage. But it doesn't explain why the engines failed completely. Al Weaver wants to know if the sheer volume of rain the engines were forced to ingest could have caused their failure. The same engine model that powered Southern Airways 242 is run with up to 14% water to air.
Okay, engines at 3/4 throttle. Let's begin.
Investigators ultimately throw monsoon-level rains against the engine. They run it from idle up to full throttle.
Okay, that's it. Shut it down.
The rain was not enough to cause the kind of surge that tore the engines on Flight 242 to pieces.
Thanks very much, gentlemen.
And the engine operated normally, no abnormalities. So our judgment was we could not conceive of a rainstorm that would put more water in. So we knew we were going in the wrong direction with more water.
The water ingestion test points investigators to another suspect.
That's a hole, isn't it?
It's not showing a hole, is it?
Hail. People who survived the crash describe seeing hail the size of baseballs. It was powerful enough to break the plane's 3.5 centimeter thick windshield. Al Weaver discovers significant hail damage on both of the plane's engine cowlings.
Starting at the front of the engine, we noted that the inlet cowl and the center body that streamlines the airflow going into the engine, which are parts of the aircraft structure and made out of aluminum, were all dented from both engines. And that led us to suspect that the existence of the hail might have been a significant contributor.
Weaver knows that it would take a powerful force to damage the hard metal compressor blades.
We knew from the examination mechanically of the engines that the hail itself did not cause any damage to the engine. It only dented the outside of the covering over the engine.
Heavy precipitation and a damaged cowling could have interrupted the engine's airflow and caused a surge. But one surge shouldn't tear an engine apart. Weaver suspects that massive pieces of hail may have clogged a vital outlet in the plane's engines: the bleed valves. When pressure builds between the two compressors, bleed valves should open automatically to release that pressure and clear the surge. If the bleed valves were blocked, the engines would have continued to surge over and over again.
Once the engine began to surge, the action that the pilot should have taken was to pull the throttles back to clear the surge.
Al Weaver turns to the cockpit voice recorder and discovers that the circumstances may have caused the crew to do the exact opposite.
Maintain 15,000, Southern 242.
We're trying to get it up there.
Weaver learns that the crew was asked to climb while in the heart of the storm.
Maintain 15,000, if you understand me. Maintain 15,000, Southern 242.
In order to climb, the captain had to increase thrust to his engines, which would have made matters worse.
But if the surge was not cleared and allowed to continue, then the engine would simply break itself internally.
We're trying to get it up there.
Advancing the throttles would only worsen the situation.
With its bleed cavities blocked by hail, pressure built up inside the engines, bending the compressor blades until they shattered.
Left engine won't spool.
Our left engine just cut out.
And once the blades broke in the compressor, then the engine has no hope of ever working again.
Investigators now understand how the pilots misread the storm and how their engines failed as a result of it. But they don't know why the pilots weren't warned that there was such a severe storm in their path.
Who's got the landing?
Not me. Was the captain?
Ignition, sir.
As the pilots prepared to depart Huntsville, they did have a weather report from Southern Airways, but the information was already hours old.
Looks like you guys got a good one coming.
Southern Airways dispatch did not have updated information. They didn't subscribe to the National Weather Service's update system. They did have a subscription to a service that required them to dial up and receive the information. When the dispatcher called the phone number to get the updated information, it was busy and never pursued it, and was not able to provide any kind of update information to the crew of 242.
Southern Airways 242, I'm painting a line of weather which appears to be moderate to possibly heavy precipitation, starting about 5 miles ahead.
Could Huntsville have provided better weather information? Absolutely. But in the course of doing their job, they provided localized weather information about an intense thunderstorm or rain shower that was moving over the airport. They were only responsible really for about 40 nautical miles. What the crew of Flight 242 was looking at was well beyond 40 miles.
With little information on the storm and having misread their weather radar, Bill McKenzie and Lyman Keel flew blindly into massive thunderheads. The heavy rain and hail crippled their engines. The crew decided that their only option was an emergency landing.
We lost both engines. How about getting the vector to the nearest place?
Southern 242, roger. Turn right heading 100. Will be vectors for a straight-in approach to Dobbins. Runway 11.
When investigators analyzed the flight path of Southern Airways 242, they discover one more deadly oversight.
From the time the crew realized that they had no engine power till the time of touchdown was about 9 minutes. So in looking at the critical decision-making, they had about 7 minutes of solid critical decision-making before they were committed to that emergency landing on the highway.
Get us a vector to a clear area, Atlanta.
After the engines failed, the pilots made a 180-degree turn towards the west, looking for an escape from the storm. That takes them directly away from Dobbins Air Force Base. The turn takes the pilots out of the hailstorm, but leaves them further away from a runway. They also lose minutes of valuable flying time. Only once the pilots escape the hailstorm do they turn again towards Dobbins.
Is there an airport between our position and Dobbins?
Southern 242, no, sir. Closest airport is Dobbins.
Had they maintained that course to Dobbins, rather than make the turns or try to find another airport, they probably would have had a better success rate and definitely a better survival rate.
Southern 242, roger. Turn right heading 100. Will be vectors for a straight-in approach to Dobbins. Runway 11.
By the time Mackenzie received the instructions, Southern Airways 242 had been flying away from Dorbins for too long. The plane was simply too far and flying too low to make it there.
Declare an emergency, Bill.
But there was one last missed opportunity to save Flight 242. Investigators learned that just as Mackenzie and Keel were directed towards Dorbins Air Force Base, they were right above another runway. Cornelius Moore Airport.
I thought we would land at Cornelius Moore Airport because I was familiar with that airport. I had flown many times in our airplane back and forth between Decatur and Atlanta.
Investigators learned that Cornelius Moore was just out of range of radar at Atlanta Approach Control. They didn't know it existed. They could not direct Southern Airways 242 there because they couldn't see it on their screens.
When I learned that the controllers in Atlanta didn't know about the Cornelius Moore Airport in Cartersville, I was upset because we went within, I think, 3 or 4 miles of that airport, had a 4,000-foot runway, and even though some of the controllers thought it was too short, it sure would have been better than that highway we landed on.
I was very, very angry. That's such a futile reaction. You know, there was such a waste of life that I was sad.
The NTSB investigation concludes that the catastrophic failure of the turbofan engines and the failure to convey sufficient information on the storm to the pilots are the causes of the crash of Southern Airways 242. The NTSB acts immediately. It issues a recommendation that weather radar systems aboard planes and in air traffic control centers be upgraded to better portray weather systems.
In today's commercial aircraft, pilots have available to them color weather radar. It's radar that will depict in various color bands the intensity of the precipitation.
The crash of Southern Airways 242 also leads to a better understanding of how engines should be managed in heavy precipitation.
We once again reaffirmed to the pilots the importance not to allow the engine to continue operation in continual surging. If there is a surge condition for any reason, you should clear the surge, because if you didn't clear the surge and allowed it to operate, it would break eventually.
In every air crash, investigators try to determine whether or not the accident was survivable.
When you look at the survivability in an aircraft accident, you can definitively say that the design of the seat contributed to the survival factors aspects. But the statistics that bear out whether sitting in the front of the airplane is safer, the middle of the airplane is safer, or the back of the airplane is safer don't exist. In this particular instance, a surviving passenger, Don Foster, was quick thinking. He put a leather jacket over his head and used a pillow as a buffer between the seat in front of him and his face. That probably saved his life from the standpoint that it minimized any injuries he would have suffered.
In fact, the NTSB believes that if flight attendants had distributed blankets and pillows to the passengers, there would have been fewer injuries as a result of the crash.
We learned from every airplane crash. We learned from this one. We learned that the communication broke down within the FAA, within Southern Airways, even within the cockpit of that DC-9. What we didn't ultimately learn, though, is the most important lesson, and that is awesome respect for Mother Nature and what Mother Nature can do.
30 years have passed since Southern Airways 242 crashed through the small community of New Hope, Georgia. Every 10 years since the crash, survivors of the tragedy gather at a church in New Hope. They remember those that were lost and help one another cope with the tragedy. It's one of the longest-running survivors group of its kind.
I want to welcome you to this service today in remembering April the 4th, 1977, when the Southern Airways Flight 242 crashed here in the New Hope community.
Earl D. Johnson. Lyman Keel, Jr. William Wade McKenzie.
Earl C. Griffin, Jr.
After the crash, I had a hard time understanding how I managed to survive. And after a couple of months, I quit worrying about it. I felt like I had a second shot at it. I felt like that family was more important, having fun was more important.
It took a pretty deep toll on our family, my mother and my father especially. They lost 2 of their children and all their grandchildren all at one time.
And I can still, to this day, I can smell the odors, and I can hear the sounds, and I can see those people. So many things will bring back those smallest memories. And every time it's triggered, the emotions come back. You don't want them to, you don't ask for them, but you can't stop them.
I believe it's important for the survivors to get together so that they can share their experiences, know that there are other people that went through the same feelings that they did.
I mean, I've had a great life because of this, in a way. That makes no sense, but it's changed me for the better. I think I've done better, had a better life because of how I grew from that.
May this service do honor to these dear loved ones, and may it bring comfort and peace to we who remain.